everyone. Welcome to another episode of Car Ride Conversations meets QC Brief. We're merging the two. Michael Forian is in the car.
Good morning, George.
And this is going to be fun. This is we're merging two different segments because it makes sense. This is the last day of the campaign, October 3rd. If people haven't gone out to vote, hopefully they're going to start soon. The polls open at 8, right? 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So they're already going out.
It should be open by now.
It's early in the morning. We thought, hey, it'd be a good idea to do this in the car. We'll take a ride into Montreal and discuss everything that's, well, not everything, but some of the stuff that have happened during the campaign, the highlights, the bad stuff, things to watch out for during the campaign. I don't know about you, man, but I felt that this day would never come. It was such a long campaign.
It's a long campaign, but even this morning, I don't know about you, but I got up and I had anxiety. I was filled with stress. I was a complete stress ball because I know what it's like waking up on jour J, on election day, as we call it, and being at the office super early in the morning, making sure all the volunteers are
you don't sleep. You don't even sleep.
You don't. You really don't. You try to get a few winks here and there. You're definitely, if you're sleeping, you're not sleeping well. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And just preparing the ground game, everything's been prepared for, if it's a good campaign, a few days in advance, but just making sure those last minute details are all done, that you got some food coming in, because making sure that food and maybe a little bit of booze too towards the end, whether it's a good campaign or a bad campaign, depending on the result, you're going to need booze either way. That's going to be important, and definitely some coffee along the way too. So it was weird. It was nostalgic this morning, waking up and not being part of a campaign, but definitely having observed it with you, with our viewers, with our listeners, and it's been crazy. It's been.
Well, you're right. You're right. It's definitely been weird. This is the first time since 2007 that I have done almost nothing. Well, actually, nothing. I mean, what I've done during this campaign is these segments, which I enjoyed very much. But in terms of actual, political work. Nothing.
Yeah.
And it's felt very, very strange. It feels like I feel almost guilty. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like, should I have done more?
I feel lost.
Yeah. It's the strangest thing ever. Anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, during this day, like you said, a lot of the candidates, there's like these butterflies in the stomach, right? It's the last day.
Yeah.
There's also a sense of relief, like, oh God, thank God it's over, right? Because let's be honest here, for the viewer or for your general population that is just bombarded daily with this information, either on TV, on the radio, on the call if you're being called, right? The pamphlets at home, it does get heavy. But imagine doing the campaign as a candidate. I mean, it's extremely long days. We're talking about really early in the morning until really late at night, and it takes a toll on you, right? That 35th day or 34th, whatever.
And it will take a few weeks also for a lot of candidates.
To just decompress,
to get out of that jam that they're currently in right now, and something that their families have experienced too. Their friends have been experiencing, their partners. I mean, this has been a toll not just on them, but also their campaign workers, their campaign managers, their press secretaries,
everyone,
volunteers,
and hats off to everyone, right? Especially the candidates, obviously. I mean, for the campaigns that they ran. In general, it was okay. We had in the beginning a few little things that we questioned with respect to the threats and the violence, which I had never seen before or very little of. But also, in addition to the candidates that put their name in the race, like you said, all the people that they gathered and brought into this campaign, the volunteers, the workers, like everyone, especially obviously the family members and friends that are close to these candidates that immediately felt the impact of this whole 35 days or so. Good on you guys.
So I think, like, just in terms of what were some of the highlights of the campaign that we witnessed. I mean, when there's good news, there's very little attention. When there's bad news, there's a lot of attention from the media, and they're going to focus on things like that. I think looking back at some of the debates, and especially, looking at the last debate was perhaps the most impactful. The first one was maybe a test run, and the interview style Radio-Canada, interviews that they had on Radio-Canada, that was an introduction for many Quebecers to candidates they had never heard from before, or had heard very little from previous that night. And the issues that I felt really got to a lot of Quebecers were ones that make them emotional. Social issues, language was a heavy one, identity was a heavy one. And I felt that we did tap into a few debates on fiscal policy that were important as well. In particular with Quebec Solidaire proposing a wealth tax. Again, emotional because you're talking about death. This is a death tax. You're talking about things that really tap into the heart and soul of somebody and their finances during a very difficult time. But I feel that overall we didn't really get into the nitty-gritty of a lot of the policy. We didn't get into a lot of what differentiates, for example, the PLQ from the CAQ on a lot of issues outside of social issues like identity, like Bill 21, like Bill 96, like Bill 40.
You're absolutely right. These elemental things and the differences between each party weren't discussed, number one. And number two, we just spent 2.5 years dealing with probably the biggest health crisis that we've all known, right? Very little about health. Our schools were closed down. Kids were at home. They're outdated. Nothing on education. So I felt that also those two things should have, or at least I was expecting to be central in the campaign. They weren't, right? And again, for anyone listening or watching, over half of the budget of the Quebec government goes into health, and it wasn't, or at least it was very absent during this election period.
And I think that it goes to show that, again, the vast majority of Quebecers agree with how François Legault handled the pandemic. They're impressed, particularly Francophones, particularly those that are outside the region of Montreal. They gave Legault a seal of approval. They gave Christian Dubé a seal of approval in terms of that handling from that perspective there. So I think that's one thing to know. But then going back to, for example, what we didn't talk about, or perhaps distractions, and maybe they're good distractions for some, bad distractions for others, but looking at the rise of a completely new, relatively new political movement, even before the campaign in Éric Duhaim's Conservative Party of Quebec.
Yeah.
The Conservative Party of Quebec was a non-player in Quebec, a non-consequential player in Quebec politics up until Éric Duhaim having taken over the reins of the party.
8-9 months ago.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then before that, they would make a little blip in terms of their performance in the polls. Nothing, noteworthy. Their leader, their previous leader, Adrien Pouliot, was, a respected economist, worked with the Montreal Economic Institute, but did not really gain or garner the attention anywhere close to what Éric Duhaim and Éric, his background working within politics, working inside of radio broadcasting, he's somebody who knows how to captivate an audience. So I think no matter which party Éric Duhaim had joined or revolutionized like he has with the Conservative Party here in Quebec, he would have been popular and he would have been able to get his message across.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think it's necessarily the party. It's not the banner. It's the individual. And we've spoken about that during the different episodes that we've done about leadership.
Yeah.
And how, especially with reference to the Liberal Party, where we're wondering what's going to happen as of tonight or maybe tomorrow morning. We don't know. Let's see. I think it's going to be as of tonight but you brought to the table the idea that maybe we're witnessing the end of the Liberal Party. Maybe so, but anything can turn around if you have that one person that has what it takes, right? The charisma, the leadership ability, the speaking ability, the communications ability to kind of rally everyone, get them excited again, and get them moving. Because definitely, that's what the Liberal Party is going to have to look at going forward.
And I think that we're in a state of flux right now for the Quebec Liberal Party, and it's 150 years plus of existence in the political landscape of Quebec. This is very pivotal. Tonight is the one night that they have to prove themselves. And, looking at, for example, what are going to be the deciding factors for Dominique Anglade tonight? One, whether or not she will be winning her own seat in Saint-Henri-Sainte-Anne. If she doesn't, she is gone. Now, I've been hearing rumors the past couple of days that if she's able to keep the threshold of 20 plus seats, that she will attempt to stay on as leader of the Quebec Liberal Party. However, I think there are also going to be members of her caucus, new members of her caucus too, that will not be ambitious or enthusiastic about her staying on in that regard, and will make an active attempt to call for a leadership race.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're talking about, because it feels as though they settle for mediocrity, right? It's like already at 27 or 26, 27 that they had from 2018 was a historic low. To think that if we maintain the threshold at around 2021, that's good.
Right.
Because I only lost 5 seats from 2018, which in general terms is acceptable. But it still sucks.
I'm not that bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Please don't get rid of me. I'm not that bad.
I mean, we did better. I mean, they had us at 15, and I got us 20. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. And I think that the Liberal Party, if it wants to, like we spoke about right before, to bounce back, they're going to have to shift also their mindset, right? I mean, you can't accept, the mediocre anymore. You have to set high goals and high targets, and at least try to aim for them. And even if you miss them, you're going to get much better than what you initially started off with, right? But something similar to this is relatable to the PQ as well. I mean, they had 8 seats. They're not going to end up with anything more than probably 3. Yet the leader, I'm convinced, is going to stay because he did a phenomenal job.
Well, by and large, the PQ and PSPP had a great campaign.
Yeah.
Because again, the expectations were so low for them, and he did everything that I think was in line with his voter base. He was authentic. He stuck to the independentist rhetoric, and it's a winning recipe with that segment of Quebecers that are looking for that. Whereas Dominique Anglade, I think she did everything possible to piss off her base. The very little little support she has from Francophone Quebecers, is slipping, and she's losing on identity questions and on social issues. And the same thing when it comes to her Anglophone base, the historic Anglophone base of the PLQ, that has slipped as well with missteps in Bill 96, with certain lack of authenticity when it came to those important social issues on identity, language, and who we are as Quebecers.
Oh no, she's lost on all fronts, right? I mean, she's at what, 6, 7, or 8% in the Francophone vote, which I've never seen.
I think that's even high. Those are high numbers.
Yeah, but I mean, the lowest that I remember ever falling in the Francophone vote was around 22%.
Right.
But with the support that the Liberal Party always had in its base regions, like in those pockets like Outaouais, Montreal, Quebec City, that's how they would guarantee at least 45 seats all the time. I don't know if you ever heard this, but I remember being told that, look, George, don't worry about it. In the worst case scenario, we're going to have 45 seats.
Yeah.
So that's the lowest
45,
we can get.
50 seats, like that's always what I've been told. It's like, that's our buffer right there because of the Estrie, because of Laval, because of the seats over in the Outaouais like Pontiac and Hull, which again, Pontiac and Hull, the 2 remaining seats for the POQ in the Outaouais, are targets tonight.
Yeah,
definitely Hull more than Pontiac.
More than Pontiac, yeah, exactly.
But this for Maryse Gaudreault, who this is she's been around for a few mandates now, a deputy speaker in the National Assembly, somebody who's relatively respected within the party. And she's at risk. She's at risk tonight. The same could be said a little bit less for Pontiac, where you have André Fortin, who's looked upon as a potential dauphin, somebody who would be a successor to Dominique Anglade if things go poorly for her tonight, which they're bound to at this point. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and tonight's tonight. But my point being is that over in Pontiac, the only thing that will save somebody like André Fortin will be perhaps that Anglophone vote, if he's able to get it out. And that's one of the things that we've seen consistent across the provinces. In polling, subsets of people that have responded to polls, we were able to note that Anglophones are not wanting to respond to election polls. And what does that mean come election day or come advanced polls, it means if you're less likely to respond to a poll, you're less likely to actually go out and vote come that opportunity.
Yeah.
And it means that Anglophones are going to be staying home by and large today compared to previous elections.
And we see that also. I mean, we mentioned the low score in the Francophone vote.
Right.
When you're looking at the Montreal, how the Liberal Party of Quebec is scoring in the region of Montreal, which was probably its strongest fortress, right? I mean, what, 70%?
But now we see
they're
that
at 20 in the 20s.
Now we see that in both the Forum Research poll last night, and I believe a Main Street poll that came out last night as well. These are the two final polls of the campaign. Most probably Leger might be coming out with one later today. But my point being is that this demonstrates that with these two polls that the CAQ has finally penetrated the island of Montreal. They are now in a better position than the POQ have ever been throughout the campaign. They're on top. The CAQ is now number one. They're dominating Montreal, not by a lot, but by a decent margin.
Yeah, by a good 10 points,
yeah.
Which is intriguing because when we, throughout this whole campaign, when we were listening to Premier Legault's discourse,
right,
it was everything different than we've been used to about Montreal, right? The whole thing about the immigration, which plagued him from the very beginning of the campaign all the way until the very end. He practically went into hiding. I was hearing that he had told the media that he was only going to be giving one press conference a day, like for the last 3-4 days, right? So the guy really just, secluded himself so that nothing worse can come out of his mouth, so that he won't be cornered, and that is intriguing to me because it played in his favor on the island of Montreal.
Yeah,
like something that no one would have expected.
Well, balance that out with just a poor performance, a poor campaign. That's from Dominique Anglade. Maybe.
Well, it goes to explain what you were saying. The Anglophone and the Allophone voters are just absent in this campaign.
Yeah, and also on top of that, he to make it even more interesting is the fact that he's used Montreal as a piñata during this campaign outside of the immigration question. Yeah, outside of the immigration question, saying things like, "We're not going to let Montrealers make decisions for Quebecers," meaning Quebec people living in Quebec City.
Yeah,
and that in itself, again, this very anti-Montreal rhetoric, to show an increase in the polls for him, to show him dominating the greater Montreal area, I think really
for me, it's
falls
fascinating.
on Dominique Anglade.
For me, it's fascinating. And it's surprising also because, one, he started off with 2 MNAs in the region of Montreal.
Right.
And he's probably going to be making gains, maybe 2 more seats.
Oh, I think, and I think there's a lot in play. It could be more than 2 seats. Let's get into a bit of that in terms of in the greater Montreal region, and particularly on the island of Montreal, what are the seats to watch tonight and which ones could be flipping to the CAQ? Because that's the trend that we're seeing, of course, this election. We're looking at ridings like Verdun, where Isabelle Melançon, the incumbent, somebody who was a political staffer, worked her way up the ranks, won in a by-election after the passing of the late Jacques Daoust, and came in as an MNA in that by-election during the Couillard era, became minister of the environment, to my understanding, and I believe at culture at one point too. So she had a few different roles in that circumstance, and really made a place for her in that party. But she is respected in Verdun, doesn't live in Verdun. She lives off island, being challenged by Véronique Tremblay, who is the city councillor previously under Denis Coderre's administration, now sitting in the Proche Montréal caucus with Valérie Plante. Somebody who is representing the Nuns Island portion of the riding. And again, very heavy Francophone, very heavy elite portion. Nuns Island itself and Verdun are 2 very different neighborhoods, but they're grouped together into the Verdun riding itself. So I do think it's prenable, as we would say. It's takeable for the CAQ. Véronique Tremblay is running a good campaign there. She has managing her campaign Alexandre Ramoncheri.
Alex is there.
Who's the chief of staff to Minister of the Economy, Minister Fitzgibbons. So my point being is that
a lot of experience.
A lot of experience. Some people are on the ground. They're really they're invested. The CAC is investing a lot of resources into Verdun because they know it's takeable. They know they can pull this off.
So we have, look, here are the ridings that I'll be watching out for in the region of Montreal: Verdun, Saint-Henri, Sainte-Anne, Marquette, and Maurice Richard,
which is already lost.
So those four ridings. So Maurice Richard, the Liberals are not picking that one up for sure. Now, is it going to go to the CAQ or Quebec Solidaire? I think it's going to the CAQ, Maurice
Likewise,
Richard. Marquette.
And that's a really good candidate who's running over there, Audrey Murray, somebody who's very well respected, a respected lawyer, somebody who's worked within the Quebec, l'appareil politique for quite some time in governance, and somebody who's very well, and a very big win. It would be huge for Legault in terms of forming his cabinet to have somebody like her in caucus, being able to put her in a very important position.
Now, Marquette is a three-way race. Liberals, CAQ, and Quebec Solidaire.
Right.
I don't think Quebec Solidaire would be able to penetrate there. I think, if anything, if it's going to fall to the CAQ.
Right. But the only thing that will save Enrico Ciccone over there would be the Anglophone vote, if he's able to get them out. Of course, he does have the city of Dorval inside of his riding, so that's one thing that you also have to take into perspective is that Anglophone concentration and a good half of his riding. Will that be enough to outweigh the Lachine portion of his riding and sort of shift the balance there?
And the other two, we just spoke about Verdun and Saint-Henri, Sainte-Anne, which I think those two might be leaning Quebec Solidaire rather than CAQ, in my opinion. I don't know.
Right. And I mean, you have, a respected candidate, somebody who's well established in terms of, a political leader like Véronique Tremblay over in Verdun. However, for the CAQ over in Saint-Henri, Sainte-Anne, they've got Nicolas Huard-Isabelle running over there, somebody who is, a political staffer for the CAQ, relatively young, he's in his early 20s, wanted to run against the leader, but I think at the time when they were going to be putting up a candidate against Dominique Anglade, the CAQ didn't really evaluate how takeable that riding would be.
Yeah.
Now they're coming to discover, we might actually have a chance taking down Dominique Anglade over in Saint-Henri, Sainte-Anne in her own riding. And that is saying something to you right there. So again, it's everything is very much in flux right now.
The other one that would surprise a lot of people, and it's been talked about a little bit, is Viau, center of Montreal, historically liberal riding.
Right. Very diverse riding.
Very diverse riding, very but it is also the only one kind of floating around a sea of Quebec Solidaire. Since Laurier Dorion was last in 2018, it's surrounded, and it's a strategy that we've seen with Quebec Solidaire. They start off in Mercier, and it kind of spreads from there all around. They're very intelligent in the way they organize themselves and the way that they share resources in the neighboring ridings, and they've spread out intelligently. And Quebec Solidaire on the island of Montreal is just there, smack in the middle of Montreal. Let's go grab coffee here.
Oh, good idea.
So there may be a possibility. I mean, it would shock me profoundly that Liberals lose Viau.
It's very much a possibility, and I'm even seeing in recent riding polls the possibility of a riding like Bourassa-Sauvé being able to flip, which again is even more red than Viau, historically speaking.
Right.
But I mean, you're seeing with the Liberals really trailing the CAQ, and Quebec Solidaire being able to strategically come in the middle in certain ridings, it could very well be the case. George, look at this. We just for a moment we disappear, and then Tim Horton appears. Go figure.
They're not sponsoring the show, but if ever they want to, it's an opportunity.
You know who to reach.
So that was the seats, in my opinion, to watch out for the region of Montreal. There may be more. I don't know. But I think that's pretty much all right. The other one we forgot. Before we get to the other regions, the one that definitely is going to be looked at is Camille Lorrain.
course. You
Camille
have PSPP running over there, leader for the PQ.
I honestly wish he wins. Honestly, I think
Me
he did
too.
a good job. I think he deserves to be in the House. And really for him and for his party.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never agree with the PQ, but I do believe in
shocked.
democracy and the fact that that voice, should matter in the National Assembly. It
should.
Yeah.
He has a strong voice, and I think that he'll play his cards right and probably win tonight.
That'd be interesting to see.
It's held. Excuse me. It's held by a CAC backbencher, Richard Campeau.
Yeah.
Who has been putting on a good campaign there, but again, he doesn't really have name recognition.
Yeah.
And the name recognition part plays a big part in terms of how people vote, and that's a good 10 to 15% of how people might vote come election day. So
plus the fact that Quebec Solidaire, the Quebec Solidaire candidate, we spoke about that,
Exactly.
resigned. So if that door is all open now, depending on whether or not those members of Quebec Solidaire or supporters of Quebec Solidaire will come out or not, who knows?
Like, I'm still shocked that person's name is going to be completely stripped from the ballot, that the votes that went towards that candidate were going to be put aside and not counted.
I would have contested that because it's not fair to the people that voted someone other than Quebec Solidaire. What they should do is open those ballots, count the votes, and whichever ballot has selected her, just discard that one.
Yeah.
So you can't penalize the other citizens that voted, the other candidates other than Quebec Solidaire. But I don't know. Maybe that's what they're going to do. I don't know.
No. That is what they're going to do. It's I'm just against the fact the only votes that are going to be cast aside are going to be the Quebec Solidaire votes inside of the riding.
I understood that everything that happened.
No. That would be a great slap in the face of democracy. But I still think it's pretty bad for I don't like the fact that the Elections Act allows for this. And again, before this event, I never even knew this was a possibility. I think it's relatively new because we'll recall certain campaigns where individuals would be caught in scandal at some point during the campaign. Their name would have to stay on the ballot, and we would still see their name being maintained on the ballot. So it would cause some difficulties in that regard there. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at other regions now. Ridings to watch out for. Obviously, the region of Quebec. The region of Quebec.
Listen,
particularly because of the presence of
the
PCQ. Conservative Party.
Yeah. The Conservative Party will be able to take. They've been trying to really target ridings like Chauveau, the two Beauce ridings, Beauce Nord and Beauce Sud. And Vanier, La Rivière, some other ones around in the Quebec City region, but
the Chute de la Chaudière.
Chaudière-Appalaches area, like that. Those ridings have been really targeted by the PCQ. The problem is voter efficiency. They don't have enough supporters in one concentrated riding or in two concentrated ridings, let's say, in order to actually make a difference. Their voter concentration is too spread out. They've got a good 15% plus of Quebecers that want to vote for them. Obviously, it's higher in the Quebec City region and in that 200-kilometer corridor north and south. Is it enough to get a seat right now? It's not the case. That's problematic for them. So the CAC will be maintaining, by less of a margin than last time, their seats in that region. They've got a whole cast of new candidates running in that area. Martine Biron, former Radio-Canada journalist. Bernard Drainville.
Yeah, in Lévis.
Former PQ cabinet minister, radio commentator in more recent times. Respected individuals that have either reported on or have worked within Quebec politics and have had a seat at the cabinet table in the case of Mr. Drainville. So that will be making a difference in terms of, and this is another thing that we have to get into and talk about this, just particularly for the Quebec City region, is with all these high-profile candidates, not just there, but across the province, how do you form a cabinet with 95, 100 caucus members?
That's going to be a huge task for Legault. In French, they say, il aura l'embarras du choix, right?
Exactly.
He'll be lucky. He'll have a good pool of, competent people to select and to form his next cabinet.
But a lot of unhappy people as well.
There will be a lot of unhappy people, among which, obviously, we have Jean Boulet, who we spoke about, came out with a very unfortunate stuff about immigrants. And this came out 5 days before.
Him saying, and I'm paraphrasing, 80% of immigrants that come to Quebec go to Montreal, don't speak French, don't work, and
are not aligned with Quebec values.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, going into how we've been speaking very little about economic policy, we've been speaking very little about the economic values of parties, but I've been talking a lot about social values, identity questions, linguistic questions, and now immigration is coming into the mix. It goes to show what people are really focusing in on compared to, you would think like the real issues, right?
Am I going the right way?
I don't think so, but it's fine. We can just drive around.
Okay.
It's okay. George doesn't know where he's going, but that's fine, everybody. Neither do I.
Turn on Cavendish. Yeah. Anyway, so Jean Boulet is obviously out. I have a feeling that the education minister, Jean-François Robert, probably won't be getting a seat as well. He didn't do very well.
That, or he'll be getting a demotion within cabinet. Yeah. I know that he's somebody who's has a fairly good relationship with François Legault, so that's something to account for in terms of how some of the decisions are made. But in terms of his performance, I think it's been pretty lackluster. People haven't been impressed. It's a difficult portfolio.
Education is very tough. Education and health are the toughest cabinets to have.
And also the two ministries with the biggest budgets.
Exactly. Having said that, though, the health minister is doing a pretty stellar job. I mean, he has a very good health minister in, what's his name?
Christian Dubé, who we know will be reappointed to that post.
Guaranteed,
because François Legault has come out and mentioned the names of certain cabinet ministers that he'd like to see maintained, Christian Dubé being one of them.
Right. I think Benoit Charette might not get environment again.
I think you're right. Especially with what's happening over at the Fonderie over in Rouyn-Noranda.
Yeah.
It's definitely been a hot potato for him.
I feel
during the campaign on top of it.
Yeah. I feel like Christopher Skeet is going to get a place in cabinet. Not because first of all, I like him. I think he's very good. He's very efficient, but also because the CAQ is going to do spectacularly well in the region of Laval.
Right.
They're going to get pretty much all the ridings except maybe for Chambéry, and even there, depending on whether the loyal Liberal vote comes out to vote,
maybe,
who knows?
Maybe for Skeet, but I do think that 5 of those 6 ridings are very takeable for the CAQ, and they probably at the end of the night will have 5 of those 6.
I think they're going to have Laval. That's it. I mean, forget about Chambéry.
Do you think they'll take Chambéry or no?
I don't know.
It's
like it wouldn't surprise me if they did. It'll be
because
difficult.
they have a Greek candidate running there.
No. You mean the CAQ? The CAQ does have a Greek candidate.
Yeah.
But so does the Conservatives. So the Conservatives
for sure. But I mean, in terms of like voter legitimacy, in terms of people that really have an ability to, take the riding, I don't think the Conservatives are going to come anywhere close.
No. But look, it's a traditionally liberal riding. The question remains on whether or not, this is what we're talking about before, is the loyal liberal base going to come out? Now, in a riding like Chambéry, maybe it doesn't matter because they're going to win anyway,
right.
But it could be significant enough, and especially with both the CAQ and the Conservative Party running a Greek candidate, maybe they'll create they'll be able to
split
to steal some votes, especially in the younger demographic that are turning conservative. Anything is up in the air, man. I'm not ready to exclude anything. But in any case, what I think we can pretty much say for a fact now is that at least 5 out of 6 are going to the CAQ.
Now, but that also creates another issue going back to cabinet positions. Yes, Skeet has done his time. Yes, he was the first Laval MNA, and he's played his role in that respect very well. However, there are some high-profile Laval candidates running with the CAQ that are going to the former president of the party is running there. You have these Alice Khalil, that's her name. So you have these candidates who are going to be very well placed, and a lot of women running in Laval.
It would be a bit of a slap in the face, though. However, if you have already one sitting MNA that was the first one in Laval, and now you get a good solid presence on the region.
It was already a slap in the face to Christopher when he didn't get a cabinet seat.
But let's say he was a rookie. Maybe he wasn't.
They were all rookies. They were all rookies.
They were. But whatever. Let's say we let that one slide. Now, he's done a whole mandate. He's been there. He's obviously going to be the most experienced guy in the region in terms of, as an elected MNA. it would be a slap in the face to not put him in there, especially after the presence that they're probably going to get in the region. I don't know. I have a feeling that since Jean Boulet is leaving immigration, maybe Christopher Skeet is up for the role.
Yeah,
that's just
maybe loop an Anglo portfolio minister responsible for Anglo affairs, something of
which
that
was
nature.
A horrible file to manage during this first mandate, right?
Yeah, but I mean, was it really compared to how it was managed during the POQ area of 2014, 2018?
Where am I going? Do you have a map? Where do I turn?
Just go drive around.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted to go to the...
No, it's fine. We can go drive around. We'll figure it out. No, it's fine. But in any case, we have no idea where we're going. It's like, just keep driving, George. It's fine. Don't worry. Yeah. But I think it was a terrible file to manage during the Couillard era anyway. So I don't think it's a priority for the CAQ. We know it's not a priority for the CAQ. Does it give a little bit of symbolism? For sure. But it gives symbolism without actually any consequences, because they know that they're not going to have to actually do any major policy work when it comes to the Anglophone community.
They did. Whatever they had to do, they did it in Bill 96.
Yeah.
Even if it's contested, they've invoked the notwithstanding clause.
You know exactly where we stand. You know exactly where we stand, and this is what we're going to do. And no one can take that away from them. So.
Yeah. So other than that, l'Outaouais we spoke about. They're in danger. André Fortin might pull it off. I think he will.
Caroline Saint-Hilaire, the former mayor of Longueuil, who's running a little bit far away over in the eastern townships in Sherbrooke. I think that she's primed to win it, though we have seen, Quebec Solidaire trying to hang on to that riding there. We have seen them, for example, trying to encourage university students to register in the riding of Sherbrooke.
Campus, yeah.
A little bit of controversy on that front.
Dirty tactic, nothing we haven't seen before.
No.
So let's talk about Quebec Solidaire. This is interesting. Quebec Solidaire, and we've spoken about this in other episodes, and this is something that I'll be watching out today. They were able in 2018 to break into the regions. They got Sherbrooke, they got Rouyn-Noranda, they got Taschereau and Jean-Lesage in the Quebec region. I think that they won't be able to maintain all 4 seats. So I think at the end of at the end of the day tonight, Quebec Solidaire is going to lose a couple of seats. I'm not so sure that they may even come even, depending on what they lose. Right? I think Sherbrooke and Rouyn-Noranda, I'm willing to bet that it's going to the CAQ. Now, Taschereau they may be able to keep in the region of Quebec. I'm not so sure about Jean-Lesage.
Yeah,
that would be iffy.
But
they lose 2.
But it calls into question GND's leadership, Manon Massé's leadership. It calls into question, I think it will be, if that's the case, if they don't maintain or gain, they're going to be in some deep doo-doo.
You think so?
Yeah.
I think that Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois and Manon Massé are royalty in Quebec Solidaire. And even if they don't manage to either maintain the seats they have or increase them, he did a pretty good campaign still. For him to maintain his popularity within the party. I don't think Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois' leadership will come into question at all.
Right.
But again, and they're very good in spreading, the populist lines. They're going to come up with some sort of number. I don't know. They're going to figure out a percentage of voters that voted perhaps more this time around than last time. So they're going to find something to spin positively, which is always the case, right? You always find that positive spin,
right?
Even if you end up losing. I don't know. I don't know. I think for them, if they lose Rouyn-Noranda and Sherbrooke and pick up Verdun and Saint-Henri-Sainte-Anne, they're even.
But they also become a Montreal party.
That's the next point.
They no longer become a Quebec-wide party. They no longer become a party of the regions. They become a party of Montreal.
Which then brings into question the whole issue of Montreal. Well, like will it become forever the battleground between Quebec Solidaire and Liberals? Is that where those two parties will be reduced to? Mm-hmm. That for me is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it could be very well be the case, especially with the CAQ making so many inroads into Montreal in itself, the greater Montreal area as well. Ridings that we never thought could go CAQ, they're doing pretty well right now. Mm-hmm. So it's a very scary prospect from that perspective. Well, look, who would have thought like an Anglo bastion like Dorval could possibly be represented by the CAQ.
Yeah, that's a bit of a shocker. But to be honest with you, the ridings that were held before by the PQ, as soon as the CAQ came in, you could have predicted that, look, whatever was PQ went to the CAQ, so naturally the ridings in Montreal went there as well. You know, I mean, that isn't so much of a shocker.
Right.
But to, like you said, to make gains more on the western side, like Marquette is at the limit, right, between center and west of Montreal, let's say.
Right.
It's on the edge. I consider it more west, but it's kind of like that buffer between west and east, right? So that's going to be a big gain for the CAQ.
Oh, big time, for sure. You know, and this is not even looking at, like, going back to the S3, for example. I mean, they're going to be maintaining their grasp of the S3 overall, the CAQ, that is. You know, so in terms of the PQ, some ridings where the PQ still has seats: René Lévesque, Bonaventure, Matane-Matapédia, you know, that Gaspé region. So the Côte Nord and the Gaspé, Magdalen Islands, for example. That is where I think the PQ has to really look to maintaining. I do think that it would be great for the party. It would obviously be fantastic for PSPP to win a seat in Camille Lorrain. I do think that Camille Lorrain is less safe than those four ridings I just mentioned in the regions. I think that the PQ has a better chance of being able to pick up those ridings right there. So we'll see what happens, but those are very takeable ridings for the CAQ. Très prenable. Will it actually appear? Will it come to fruition? I mean, that's the big question, right? So in terms of what happens, like, later tonight, regardless of the result, you're going to see all of the leaders speak to the media, give a speech, and again, for some, they know they're not going to be giving a speech to be. I mean, I think all four of the ones that are vying for opposition at this point know they're not going to be giving a victory speech. Legault is preparing to give himself a victory speech that will, I think, communicate to Quebecers that, you know, look, you've given us a second mandate, a strong second mandate. We deliver, and we're going to deliver more. And that's going to be the messaging coming from him. I think Anglade's going to have to be very careful in terms of what she says this evening, because she will try to maintain power if the results are somewhat in her favor. If they're not, I think that her advisors should definitely be telling her, listen, it's time to call it quits, walk away. That's it. That's all. The PQ, I think they'll be happy to. I think a victory for the PQ is PSPP getting elected.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned Dominique Anglade and her strategy tonight, right? Obviously, depending on what the result is, her main objective is to stay alive, right? I mean,
that's
of course, assuming that she wins her riding to begin with. But if that were the strategy from the very beginning, do you not think that perhaps the intelligent thing to do would have been to end her campaign in the region of Montreal rather than to go? She ended her campaign in Les Îles de la Madeleine.
No, in Ungava.
And Ungava, exactly. I mean, how convinced are you that those seats can turn liberal again? And even if they could, would it not have been a more prudent bet to come back to your base? Because that's essentially who you'll be reaching out to tonight, if ever you want to stay alive.
Exactly, for sure. And I think it didn't send a very strong message to the rest of her voter base in the region of Montreal. Listen, I had the same reaction when you saw her spending her last day in Ungava, in the Magdalen Islands. It wasn't very strong. And I don't think there is any.
I mean, maybe we're wrong. Maybe we don't know something. Maybe we haven't seen something. I have no idea. Maybe the numbers are there.
Can the parties still do internal polling? I don't know. I don't know if they can afford it.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we didn't see something. In terms of results now, where do you think we stand?
I think we stand for the CAQ to get somewhere between 95 and 100 seats. It's all going to depend on Montreal and Laval, where we're going to see those differences, because a riding like Vio could very well go CAQ. Maurice Richard, I think, is already in the bag, and Laval it's tipsy right now. We'll see what happens in that regard there.
They're taking Laval. I'm telling you, the Laval minus Chamedy, that will be.
So on top of that, if by whatever chance we see Eric Duhaime and the Conservatives pick up one or two seats here, they're picking off seats from the CAQ. So again, that brings their vote total, their supermajority, down a little bit. So, but maybe they'll be able to make it up. There'll be a few surprises tonight, and we'll see what happens on that front there. I think the PQ is gonna be between 2 and 4, with or without Camille Lorrain. But 2 and 4 is what I'm thinking for them. The Liberals, it could range wildly. Maybe we'll have a surprise tonight. They'll keep 20 seats. I think 20 seats would be a good night for them. 18 would be a little bit less good. I think it can go all the way down to 12. It's a big range, but I think given the circumstances where they're in danger and where those seats could flip to, I think that it's very dangerous.
Look, I've had them at 15 from the very beginning of the campaign. Like what I've counted, I mean, you're right. I mean, if I've had them at 15 and if they get 20, then obviously it's a good day. But again, for me, it's still the mediocrity thing. It's like, yeah, we got 20. It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure we should be celebrating 20.
Yeah.
You know?
I get to stay as leader. Woohoo!
Which I think it still won't happen if they get 20. I don't know. I think the frustration.
I think she'll try.
For sure she'll try. I mean, she has nothing to lose, right? But I think just within her own caucus, the frustration has amounted to a level which she probably won't be able to
maintain.
To sustain.
Yeah. And I think Quebec Solidaire, for them, good night will be 10 plus. Bad night will be losing. I think going below 8 will be a very bad night. I don't think that they have been trying to position themselves as a party of, relative. Will we go where the wind blows, and if we get less seats, we're going to be happy with it. I think they're trying to establish themselves as a mainstream political entity.
Yeah, their goal is to make opposition. I mean, for them, that would be the dream.
And if they were to do that, if they were to overtake the Liberals, and which I think would be just worst case scenario for Dominique Anglade, is if they were no longer official opposition, the QS came in there. That would be just...
that would be disastrous.
It's the greatest death blow you could imagine.
Right. I have Quebec Solidaire at around 8, 9. That's where I've placed them. But I do think that the Conservatives may be the surprising element in this campaign. Again, I agree with you that maybe that you're right, that they don't have enough concentrated voters. But I think if there's one surprise that may occur, I think it would be that. We'll see. I have a feeling that he's going to do much better in the region of Quebec than he's predicted.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I could be completely wrong here, but I don't know. I think that if I were to expect a surprise, it would definitely be with the Conservative Party and no one else. I mean, I think pretty much it's going to be status quo, though. You're going to have a CAQ government, much more reinforced.
Right.
A Liberal in opposition, Quebec Solidaire second opposition, PQ next, and I think that the Conservatives are going to break into the House.
Yeah, no, it could be possible. I think it would be a huge one seat for Eric Duhaime would be huge for him, huge in terms of a political movement, and that is.
Well, yeah, considering where the party was 8-9 months ago,
and that's how Quebec Solidaire started, right?
Exactly.
And then they started the same way, and then they were able to pick off seats.
But Quebec Solidaire was the biggest shock because in 2008, I remember this. They weren't even talking about Quebec Solidaire. They weren't even polling. Nobody even saw Amir Kadir coming. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, mind you, polling has gotten much better. I mean, let's give them that.
Yeah.
It's gotten way better over the years. But yeah, I remember that. I was like, what? Who's Amir Kadir? Like, what? What's Quebec Solidaire?
Right.
What? So I don't know. Let's wait and see what happens. It's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be thrilling. What else do we need to talk about? What's going to happen with those two new parties? I just saw one of the posters right now and it reminded me that there's two new parties that were created.
Right. So this is Bloc Montreal and the Canadian Party of Quebec. I think they will go, they've gone way past the last exit to relevancy. I don't think that they will be leaving a mark or an impress. I think they'll probably, here's a good night for them. I'll be nice. If Colin Standish, the head of the Canadian Party of Quebec, and Balarama Holness, the head of Bloc Montreal, get around 10%, over 10% in their own ridings.
Are you crazy?
In their own riding, that would be a good night for them. Yeah. I don't think they're going to get anywhere close to that.
No.
So I think it's going to go to show that, will they make a difference in terms of having stopped a few Liberals from being able to win their seat? Maybe tonight. maybe they'll force a few seats over to the CAC or over to Quebec Solidaire in the Greater Montreal area. But I don't think they're going to leave a big mark, and I don't think that we're going to see them being viable. These are Colin Standish, for example, somebody who's tried to run with the federal Liberals before, somebody who's tried to run with the provincial Liberals before, and I can tell you that both parties were not impressed.
Yeah.
And same thing for Balarama Holness. While he was in the midst of creating his own party, this Bloc Montreal party, I know that he reached out to the PLQ. That he tried having conversations with them, saying that he wanted to run, and of course, I think it was wise for the PLQ to say absolutely not. Your policies when it comes to the French language are not something that we can adapt to.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, we find your policy disgusting in this regard. So, back away from him, and again, let them. These are Balarama is becoming a perennial candidate. He'll run for anything and everything. So.
It'll be. I'm curious to see if in the next federal election he'll create, like a Montreal party to run in Ottawa kind of thing.
At this point, anything's possible. Anything's possible.
The other thing that I'll be looking out for, and which I'm very curious about, is to see the voter turnout in the West Island, in those safe ridings where they used to win with like 25, 30,000 vote majorities.
Yeah. Like 90%, 85%.
Yeah, like as soon as the polling, the voting stops at 8 p.m., by 8:30 they're already announced, kind of thing, right? Yeah, that I'm curious to see what the end result is going to be.
Again, I don't think that they're going to be losing any of these seats.
No. But just to see, but it's still indicative where. A couple years ago you would win with over 30,000. Now you're winning with a difference of 5 or 6 or 8. That's a huge blow.
For sure. It's a huge reputational blow. It's a huge blow to the financing of political parties too.
Yeah, exactly.
With the way that political financing has completely changed, and Quebec is really being a leader by taking this progressive approach towards, a few dollars per vote, as opposed to, you can donate $1,500 like they do federally. When it comes to donations, again, it's only $100 on a non-election year, $200 during an election year,
nothing
to a political entity. So again, parties are relying more and more, I would say now, for the most part, on that per vote subsidy that comes from the government of Quebec after elections.
Yeah, and this is the thing, right? Because right now, it's not so much whether or not you're going to win the riding. It's more so about bringing out your vote. Exactly. Even if we lose the riding, let's just get as much vote as possible because we need that money. And this, I think, and we spoke about this in one of our episodes, it's going to be an issue for the Liberal Party because if they're thinking of restructuring, they're going to end this campaign assuming that, we're talking along with the polls over here, assuming that the result is going to be what is projected, it's going to be catastrophic for the Liberal Party. Yeah. One, they're going to have a weak caucus in the National Assembly, and two, they're going to get so much less money from compared to 2018, which in 2018 already was a huge blow.
That was a big blow to them, yeah. It's not going to be pretty.
So I don't know how this party is going to restructure. That essentially, that's what I'm trying to say here.
But I think we've seen when incumbents are bound to win re-election, and polls are demonstrating that, we see a lower voter turnout overall. It's always been like that. Doug Ford experienced it in the recent election back a few months ago in Ontario. Low voter turnout, bigger majority for the PC Party of Ontario and Doug Ford. And I think we're going to be experiencing the same thing tonight with François Legault and the CAQ.
Let's wrap it up. Just general lines. What do you? How do you feel? What are you going to be looking at during this this election night?
Well, let's think about post-election. We've spoken about the future, the leader of the PLQ, and what will that take on? Is this Dominique Anglade's farewell, or is this her battle to stay on as leader? I think there's also a question in terms of the CAQ's leadership and where that will lead down the road as well. Legault has teased journalists about not running again, and this could very well have been his last election campaign as of today. So the leadership of the CAQ is important for many reasons, but notably whether or not they can keep this coalition alive and going. And this is a coalition of federalists, it's a coalition of sovereignists.
Yeah.
So putting that all together, it's a very difficult thing to bring together. The majority of the staff, the majority of the employees working within the CAC are former PQ employees. They're mostly independentists. And there are federalists amongst the ranks there, but I would say they're maybe only a third of the party itself. So it's a question of who will take over post-Legault. Who will they maintain, the Article 1 of the CAC Constitution saying that, they believe that their place, it's a powerful Quebec, a strong Quebec within the Federation? Or will that change? Will that go a different route come a new leadership of the party itself? Will be make it or break at night for GND. I think that there's going to be a lot of questions coming from les militants of Quebec Solidaire if they do not maintain or gain. And I think that will bring into question maybe how the election campaign went. Were they strong enough on certain issues? Were they not maybe left enough on certain issues? Were they not centrist enough on certain issues? And you'll see a big debate in terms of the, not so much I would say not maybe the future of GND, but more a future of, how far to the left or centrist the party needs to go in order to appease their voter base from that perspective. The PQ, listen, they could very well be seeing themselves go into another leadership race if, for example, they win no seats tonight. They win no seats tonight, then
which is doubtful, I think.
Doubtful, but it's possible, right? Eric Duhaime, I think, will. Whether he loses or wins, I think the movement is alive and well.
This is what's interesting to me. This is what I wanted to hear you speak on. Say they get no seats at all,
the party will continue on.
You think so?
Just like Maxime Bernier and the People's Party of Canada, Maxime was never able to win after 2 federal elections.
But Maxime Bernier, nobody speaks of him. Nobody speaks of his movement anymore. You don't see those massive rallies that he used to do.
I think there's something a little bit different here because I think that, albeit that we point and laugh at Duhaime for some of his ideas, we don't point and laugh when he has those crowds coming out, and he also has institutional support by officials inside of the Conservative Party of Canada, Leo Husakos, certain José Vernel, for example. Who's been doing some rallies with Eric Duhaime. Senators in particular, and some Quebec MPs have shown up to, Quebec Conservative MPs have shown up to Duhaime's rallies, haven't given their official support, but
they're hovering around.
They're hovering around, they're checking to see what's going on. They're like, hey, he's speaking a language that I'm very familiar to. So I do feel that Eric is inspired for this movement to go forward. I think that he took a very big career decision by getting invested in this movement, and I think he could very well see himself continuing down this path, maybe just getting ready for the next election down the road, or waiting to see if a by-election opens up, targeting that.
Right. It's gonna be fun. I mean, look, we've said this before. This wasn't the most exciting campaign, but in terms of the results, there's so many things that could get shifted after tonight. So that for me is going to be interesting. We're going to try and put this episode up as soon as possible. If you do see it, just go vote. If you haven't done so already,
please.
Of course. And that's it. We're probably going to be doing one more episode just to discuss the aftermath. So we're going to have officially the results, and we'll be able to have a better idea of what happened and what may happen going forward. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for listening. And have a good day. Thank you.
George, this was great. Really appreciated doing this series with you.
It was great.
It was a lot of fun.
I could not have imagined doing this with anyone else.
Means the world to me. Thanks, buddy.
All right, bud.